Usual is dedicated by the Frist family, memory of Elisheva Sima Bat Zalman, and today's shir also sponsored by Ben Marcus for the yahrzeit of her mother, Bev Marcus, the yahrzeit of her mother, Fredel Bat Shraga Feivel. It should also be for Shlema for all the Ptsuim and all the Cholim, and so on. And my granddaughter, who just got over a appendicitis operation yesterday, but she's doing well. She's a whole almost 9 years old, and Baruch Hashem, she's fine. She's home already. Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'chol. Chatotenu hu yimchol. Here it says, Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'chol, Chatotenu yimchol, Zar'enu v'chaspenu yarbe kachol, v'kacholchavim balayla. The balayla is going to be the rhyme scheme throughout the poem. And if you just look at the, not the opening stanza, the opening chorus line, Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'chol, but from the second stanza, which is Yom Panad, you have the Yud. The next line is Tzidkatcha, you have the Tzadik. Cholfa is a Chet. Kuf spells out the name Yitzchak. And then you have Hey, Heyater. Kraticha, Kuf. Tiher, Taher, it's Hakatan. Yitzchak Hakatan. Right, so who is Yitzchak? He must probably wrote more than one thing. Yitzchak Hakatan. The only problem is, we're not 100% sure which Yitzchak it is, because there were several Yitzchaks in the Middle Ages who were poets. And to sign off Hakatan, as we've seen in previous poems, it was done usually when the poet himself was still young, and as some type of a gesture of sincere humility, where he would say Shmuel Hakatan or something Hakatan, and I even have a tshuva here, which we'll get to in a second, from the Chatam Sofer. So the Chatam Sofer, his name was Moshe Sofer. Later on, his name became Schreiber. Are you related to the Chatam Sofer, by the way?
Supposedly you're related to my son brother.
Okay, that's good enough. That's good enough. Chatam Sofer's brother, because Schreiber is Sofer. What?
What was the same?
That he's related to Chatam Sofer's brother. Okay, that means you're from the Mishpacha. That's good enough. He's your great uncle. Okay. So Chatam is Chidushei Torat Moshe. Chet Taf Mem. Chidushei Torat Moshe Sofer. So his books are called Chatam Sofer. Chidushei Torat Moshe Sofer. See, it was common, as you know, to sign off on the name of your book something that was related to your name somehow or another. But at the end, he signs Moshe Hakatan Sofer mi Frankfurt de Main. Now, we know that the Chatam Sofer was born in Frankfurt, and he's a contemporary of Shlomo Shmuel Hirsch. He moves to Pressburg, and the Chatam Sofer, as we know him, is the Chatam Sofer in Pressburg, not the Chatam Sofer when he was still young in Frankfurt. He leaves Frankfurt. So you see that this particular responsum was written when he was young, before he moves on, because he still signs it that he's from Frankfurt. And he signs it Moshe Hakatan Sofer. And it was genuine expression of humility. So this Yitzchak Hakatan, who might it be? The truth is, there was one particular scholar who made an interesting suggestion. We know somebody from the 11th century known as Rabbi Yitzchak ibn Gihat. Gihat, Gimel Yud Hey Taf, Gihat. And this Rabbi Yitzchak ibn Gihat was known to the Rambam. The Rambam actually quotes him in some of the responsa that he writes, sometimes agreeing, sometimes disagreeing, but that's okay. He's aware. So if the Rambam's quoting somebody, we're talking about somebody in the major leagues, somebody who was very well known in Spain, and he was also a poet, like most of them. And this particular scholar, I wasn't familiar with the name, so it didn't mean much to me. But he said that there are other poems by Yitzchak ibn Gihat that followed the very similar poetic scheme as this poem, Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'chol. And he said, whereas we have a remez, an allusion that it's a Yitzchak, because of the acrostic here, Yitzchak HaKatan, so he's suggesting the possibility that the author is Yitzchak ibn Gihat from the 11th century. So better than that we're not going to get, but just to be on the safe side, I put on top, Mechaber Lo Yadua, unknown authorship, but perhaps Yitzchak HaKatan. I mean, it's Yitzchak HaKatan for sure, but which Yitzchak HaKatan, we don't know. Let's get to the meat. Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'chol. When is this sung? Motzei Shabbat. After Havdalah.
No, that's what we did it.
You see, Rivka's already. Right?
I see your face.
Rivka's been here long enough to know that we ask such a question, the answer isn't Motzei. Now we do sing it Motzei. You're right. But did it start as a Motzei Shabbat song? And if it wasn't a Motzei Shabbat song, what was it? So let's try to read it. Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'chol, those who separates between Kodesh and Chol. Chatotenu yimchol, he will forgive our sins. Maybe Yom Kippur. Zar'enu v'chaspenu yarbe kachol v'kachochavim balayla. Do you see I put brackets around the word kaspenu? Because the original version, it didn't say kaspenu. I think that was thrown in Borough Park. Zar'enu v'chaspenu. It was Zar'enu yarbe kachol. Some had the version Kaspenu v'zar'enu yarbe kachol. Well, that's a question of priorities, right? What comes first? So either the word kaspenu is there, or it's just Zar'enu yarbe kachol kachochavim balayla. Look at the source page with the psukim. In number two. First we'll do number 2. It's from Parshat Vayera, so we just read it just a few weeks ago. Ki varech avarechecha veharba arbe et zaracha kechochvei hashamayim v'kachol asher al sfat hayam. Avram Avinu is promised, you will have children, multiple children, like the stars in the heaven, and like the sand in the beach. Like the sand in the beach. You can't count it. So here, the phrase was, Zar'enu yarbe kachol v'kachavim balayla. So one second, the Zar'enu in the pasuk is the kochavim.
Yes.
Is it not? V'harbe arbe et zaracha kichochvei hashamayim. And then it says, kachol al svat hayam. So the Chatam Sofer, in a tshuva that I'll relate to in a minute, says that the author was concerned about the poetry here, and with poetic license, he flipped it, and he put the Zar'enu with the sand and the Kochavim balayla, because he wants Laila at the end of every single stanza. He needs Laila for this poem to work. The Kochavim balayla. As you can just scroll down the poem, every stanza ends with the word Laila, balayla, lilayla, vilayla, and so on. Nighttime. So this is sung at some nighttime. It's clearly nighttime. It's a nighttime song. And it's not a song to put the baby to sleep, right? So when was it said? So now let's look at source number 1. Source number 1 is from the Mordechai. Who is the Mordechai? Mordechai, Masechet Yoma, Perek Shvi, Shivat Yamim, Masechet Yoma. Let's just say just a word biographical who the Mordechai. His name was Rabbi Mordechai ben Hillel, and he was a prime student of the Maharam Merutenberg. Maharam Merutenberg is Moreno of Meir ben David, Meir ben Baruch from Rutenberg, and Meir ben Baruch, he was the one who was abducted and for ransom, and he paskin gave up psak that shouldn't ransom. His body lay in the prison for over 10 years, and finally at the end it was ransomed for some money, but just as a corpse, and laid to rest. At that time, in 1298, the end of the 13th century, was the Rindfleisch pogrom in Europe, and many of Moranberg's students perished. And one of them was the Mordechai ben Hillel, who was murdered, he, his wife, and 5 children in the Rindfleisch pogrom. And another prime student who I've made mention, I referred to him at a previous year, Rabbi Meir Kohen, who authored the Hagaot Mamoniyot on the Rambam. He also perished in the Rindfleisch pogrom. And I'm just going to say something that's non-political, okay? So just strike the word politics from the record. People have heard in the last 2 years, when listening to current events, something about Torah Matzlah, Torah saves. And therefore, if you're Ish Torah, you are automatically protected. So you're automatically protected, and hence, there's no need for you to be involved in protecting yourself and your family and so on. If that is the explanation of Torah Matzlah, it failed miserably. Because that's not what the explanation is. It's mentioned in the Gemara, Torah Matzlah. And you know what Torah Matzlah means? It means when you do what you have to do, if you happen to be an Ish Torah, Kadosh Baruch Hu will push along and help you what you did. Yeah, and I won't talk about military, I talk about medicine. In medicine, a person's ill, so a person says, well, Torah Matzlah. I sit and learn all day, therefore I don't have to go to the doctor. That's not going to work. That is not going to fly by anybody. In any area of human concern, there is an issue of hishtadlut, of doing what you can do. And the Rav said, our Rabbi Rav Soloveitchik said on the pasuk of that Yaakov Avinu, it says, you can see in the Chumash, he's preparing himself in his encounter with Esav. So Rashi says, LeTorah, LeDaron, LeTfilah, UleMilchama. So, maybe I'll pay off Esav, I'll bring him some gifts. That's called the diplomatic route. Maybe, and I'll have to daven, that's the religious route, and then I'll prepare for war, because that's also important. And you see that Yaakov Avinu is panic-stricken. Vayira Yaakov and Vayetzer lo, he's very, very scared, because he's not functioning on the fact that the Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to miraculously save him. You have to do what you have to do, and then hope for the best. So the fact that there were Gedolei Yisrael, and they were Gedolei Yisrael, who were murdered, and if you go through some of the keynote on Tisha B'Av, you read about the Middle Ages as well, and these various pogroms. So nobody should come and tell me Torah Matzlah, okay? It doesn't work like that. It didn't work for the Talmidei Chachamim of the Chevron Yeshiva in 29. It didn't work for the Shoah. It didn't work for the first pogrom, second pogrom, and so on. It didn't work for Rabbi Akiva and his Chaverim in the Asara Rugei Malchut. That's not what it means, Torah Matzlah, okay? And nobody should wave that banner inappropriately. So the Mordechai was in that group, and he wrote a perush on the Gemara, a commentary on the Gemara, with an eye on Psak Halacha. Now, you can have a commentary on Gemara where you're just explaining the words or explaining the concepts, or you can have your eye on what's the bottom line. And he was very much focused on the bottom line. And he's now talking about how Yom Kippur comes to an end. So how does Yom Kippur come to an end? So in some shuls, with the sounding of the shofar, and then 90% clear out, because they're not there for Ma'ariv, right? Somebody once said that's why the chazan starts for Hu Rachum Yichaper Avon. That's the first Avera, right? They're not sticking around for Ma'ariv. Or the speed that the chazan davens Ma'ariv, Motzei Yom Kippur. That's the first Avera, Hu Rachum Yichaper Avon. But so Mordechai says, Umitpalel Tfilat Aravit, this is Motzei Yom Kippur. Yedav Ma'ariv, Hamavdil, then you have Avdalah, Umevarech al Hamaor, Yibei Bora Me'ore Eish, Ve'al Besamim. Anybody here remember Besamim on Motzei Yom Kippur? No. Kinahug Rabbeinu Gershom. It should be Rabbeinu Gershom with a mem, but there's some that have the version not as it was customary by Rabbeinu Gershom. Memhe means Me'or HaGolah. That was the nickname of Rabbeinu Gershom, the one who had all the various chayrim, Rabbeinu Gershom, about reading somebody's mail and not marrying two women and so on. So it says, Besfarim Acherim, in other books of the Mordechai, it was corrected, Kederech She'osim B'Motzei Shabbat. In other words, the Mordechai said, and you have the same Havdalah on Motzei Yom Kippur like you have on Motzei Shabbat. the big news here is that he includes Besamim. We don't do Besamim on Motzei Yom Kippur. We do have Borei Morei Ha'esh. U'ma'or notel me'or she shavat. Our custom is they don't strike a match, Motzei Yom Kippur, but you have a yahrzeit candle there, and you take your Havdalah candle from the yahrzeit candle, from a light, from a flame that's been burning the entire Yom Kippur. Ve'im chal b'Shabbat, and if Yom Kippur happens to have come out on Shabbat, and now it's Motzei Shabbat also, Omer psukim v'yitin lecha, like some shuls do till this very day after Ma'ariv on Motzei Shabbos. V'shamati, says the Mordechai, I've heard. Shamati omrim she'oto piyut Hamavdil ben Kodesh lechol chatotenu yimchol nitkan was composed le'omra bebeit hakneset b'kol ram, to be said in shul with a loud voice b'motzei Yom Kippur, just on Motzei Yom Kippur. And there are some versions of the Mordechai that says b'motzei Yom Kippur shechal b'Shabbat. So now you've got a variety of customs. Either this was sung every Motzei Shabbos, and he's saying that even on Motzei Shabbos, and even on Motzei Yom Kippur, we should also sing it, because it's also Mavdil ben Kodesh L'chol. It's a similar concept. Some say that it was only sung in the rare occasions that Yom Kippur came out on Shabbat. So on that particular Motzei Shabbat, they sang a Hamavdil, but not on any old Yom Kippur, Motzei Yom Kippur, and not on any Motzei Shabbos. And then came this widespread custom that Hamavdil is sung every Motzei Shabbos. Every Motzei Shabbos. And by the way, it's not sung on Motzei Yom Kippur if it comes out in the weekday. It's sung Motzei Shabbos as part of the Motzei Shabbos Havdalah. So you see, you have a variety. And the question is, what's the connection to Yom Kippur? So let's go back to the poem. If this poem was a Yom Kippur poem, we now understand what it means, Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'chol, God who separates between holy and not holy, profane in English. Chatotenu yimchol, God should forgive our sins, and he should bestow upon the promise of Avraham Avinu. Let's move away from Yom Kippur. We're leaving Yom Kippur now with the hope that all the promises that HaKadosh Baruch Hu granted Avraham Avinu should become on us, because now we're clean. This is Motzei Yom Kippur. You don't have a sin on your record at all. So you feel that you can request from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, let's go back to Parshat Vayera, and ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu to deliver the goods. Give us these blessings of Avraham Avinu. In one of the WhatsApp posts that I received just a day ago, reminding people of the Shir, so they used an old post, and it said, Holy Poetry of the High Holidays, which means they used it from September, right? And it said, Niba v'lo yada ma niba. They said prophecy, they didn't really realize what the prophecy was. They didn't realize that I'm going to do something from Yom Deroim today. See? So don't hold them that they said something wrong. Yom pana kitzel of yotzol tomer, ekra la'el alai gomer. Yom pana, the day has just ended. Exactly. See, we have a chazan here. Right?
Don't they say Yom Poneh?
People say it the way they say it. A lot of times the Hasidic intonations mess up on but it's Yom Pana, and Ptach lanu shar be'et ni'ilat shar ki fana yom. Right, fana yom. It's without the dagesh because it's after the yud. Right? Right? Ptach lanu shar be'et ni'ilat shar ki fana yom. Fana yom means the day has come to an end. So clearly the poet has something of Yom Kippur sitting there, but we'll see in a moment that this is not an accident. Yom Pana, Kitzel Tomer. It's like the shade, the shadow. The shadow has just evaporated. If you look at the source pages, is source number 3 from Tillim, Adam lahevel dama, Yamav Kitzel over. His days are like a passing shadow. Do you remember Unatana Tokef? Unatana Tokef. So there's various parts to Unatana Tokef because the printer printed part with bold print and smaller print, and you think it's different things. It's the same author, Unatana Tokef, until you get to Kedusha. It's all the same thing. Because he gets to Berosh Shana Yekatevun, V'yom Tzom Kippur Yechatemun. It's all part of Unatana Tokef. Kama Yavrun, Kama Yabru, Mi Yechya, Mi Yamut, Mi Bekitzo, Mi Lo Bekitzo, and so on. And then it says, it continues, and then it says, Adam Yesodo Me'afar V'sofo Le'afar, Nafsho Bashul Kecheres HaNishbar. There's a comparison of the temporal state of human existence. We are limited in time, and this is all a lead up to Vatahu Melech El Chai V'Kayam. You are Kadosh Baruch Hu forever. Ein kitzba l'shnotecha. There's no limit to you. Vein kates the orach yamecha, and that leads into kedusha. So that's the Unatana Tokef, from Unatana Tokef at the beginning until kedusha mamish. So if you look there in the part of Mashul Kecheres HaNishbar, like a shattered vessel. And then it says there, among other things, it says, Ketzel Over, Anan Kala, okay? It says, Chalom Ya'uf. 7 different expressions of the temporary state of mankind. I remember 1988, my first Rosh in Ramot, I wanted to talk about this. Why is so many different expressions? So first thing I did, I didn't have the Project Hashut, the Sheilot Teshuvot yet hooked up to the computer. So what do? You call your daughter who knows Tanakh by heart, right? And I asked my daughter Ova, I said, where are these from? Because a yeshiva bacha only knows psukim if there's Haftarah or if there's a drasha in the Gemara about the pasuk. How is he supposed to know that it's Mishlei and Eov and Tilim and so on? So Peseda, most of them my daughter was able to whip out. But today you just push a button on the computer and you get all the sources, and you see that in Tanakh, various times the concept of the temporary status of human existence is mentioned in different forms. So why does the Paitan, the poet of the Unatana Tokef, give it to us in 7 different forms? Because people leave this world differently. That's why. Cheres HaNishbar, that's a wonderful, beautiful 22-year-old, a whole life in front of him. And he gets, shot down in the war, and it's over. Or a person's living a nice life comfortably and is a victim to a pigua, a terrorist attack, and he's gone in 1 split second. It was a beautiful vessel, and now it's shattered. That's one way of going. And another way of going is Ketzel Over, gradually. From minute to minute, you don't even see it. Yeah, if you stand back a week, a month, and so on, then you see the deterioration. And each one speaks of a different way how human beings exit the world. It's very, very sobering thought that we say on Rosh Hashanah. And I found out that not all of Western Ashkenaz said Unatana Tokef on Yom Kippur. In Frankfurt, they only said it on Rosh Hashanah. Only on Rosh Hashanah. That's a speech in itself. Why? But it was only said on Rosh Hashanah, and I think it gravitated to Yom Kippur in Eastern Europe because it says, Berosh Hashanah Yekatevun, V'yom Tzom Kippur Yechatemun. It's certainly relevant for Yom Kippur, no less than Rosh Hashanah. But it entered into the Machzah for sure as a Rosh Hashanah add-on, and then later, it spread a little bit to being a Yom Kippur. So you have Yom Pana Ketzel Tomer, which means it just flashes by. The day has gone by, except that it's not only relating to the day, but the Paitan is talking about one's life. Life goes by quickly. Ekra la'el alai gomer. I will call out to God, and a Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to complete something. It's based on I didn't put it in the source book, but it's based on a concept in the Yerushalmi that we know that Shabbat, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the Kedusha. It says in Bereshis, Vayivarach Elokim et Yom HaShvi'i Vayikadesh Oto. We are not the agent that brings about the Kedusha of Shabbat. It's automatic every 7th day. Vayerev Avoker Yom HaShishi Vayichul HaShamayim V'Aretz. That's what it is. But the Kedusha of Yom Tov, including Yom Kippur, is created by Am Yisrael. And that's why we say, Mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim, Mekadesh Yisrael v'Roshei Chodashim, Mekadesh Yisrael Yom Kippurim. It's Am Yisrael that brings about the Kedusha. If you don't have Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, which we call Rosh Hashanah, if you don't have the sanctification of the moon of Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, there's no Yom Kippur. So Yom Kippur is a function of Kedushat Am Yisrael, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes along with it. How do you know? Because if you ate on the 10th of Tishrei on purpose, breaking the fast without no medically prescribed reason, you're going to be held accountable. So why should HaKadosh Baruch Hu hold accountable? If Am Yisrael created the Kedusha, the answer is HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, okay, you made the Kedusha. I'm in. I'm part of it. I agree. And that's by the way, a discussion about Kiddush HaChodesh. HaChodesh is Elachem Rosh Chodashim. And Eila Moadei Hashem Mikrei Kodesh Asher Tikru Otam B'Moadam. You guys, you make the Kedusha, and then the Beit Din Shalmala, Kadosh Baruch Hu, is going to go along with it. So this is what the concept is, that Ekra La'el, I will call out, I will decide when the Yom Kippur will be, this day, the Yom Panah, but Alai Gomer, it's going to be completed by a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Yom Asher Amar Shomer. Who's the Shomer? Obviously, Kadosh Baruch Hu. The day that the guardian, Shomer Yisrael, Shmor Shayet Yisrael, Ata Boker Vigam Laila. Who said that? We look at source number 5, who's Yeshayahu. Amar Shomer, Ata Boker Vigam Laila. You see, a pasuk lifted, cut and pasted out of Yeshayahu Perikaf Aleph, right? It grafted onto this song, and it meant that the Shomer is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, will bring about the glorious redemption that happened at daytime, and another redemption that's going to happen at nighttime. And the glorious redemption of daytime, in this particular sentence, refers to the fact that Am Yisrael physically walk out of Mitzrayim in the daytime. Even though, as we'll see in a moment, Vahi b'chatzi halayla, that was Makat Bechorot. It was over. Shibud Mitzrayim was over at the moment of Makat Bechorot, when Paroi, as we were taught in first grade, ran in his pajamas to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, leave, leave, leave. And now we had time. When did we leave? It says, Be'etzem hayom hazeh. It was already broad daylight when we left Mitzrayim. So that was the Geula of Mitzrayim walking out at Baboker. And the next Geula is going to be in the thick of Galut. In the thick of Galut. That's nighttime. So that's what Yeshayahu meant when he said, Amar Shomer, Ata Boker, Vigam Laila. So now the poet is using this. Yes, we once went out of Mitzrayim, but we're going to get out of this mess also. Yeah.
Excuse me, could you just comment on the difference in the spelling? Ata with hey, I imagine means you. Ata with aleph is actually Aramaic for coming. We also find it in
Right, so Ata with an aleph means to come, and it's a play, because in Yeshayahu it's with a hey. It's correct. That's a very good point. Very good point. You know, he's using, it's cut and pasted with a little bit of a, thank you for pointing this out. Ata Boker means he's going to come. He came in the morning, and he's coming again at nighttime. You know, the word ba'a and ba'a in Parshat Vayetze, it's a Balkairi's nightmare when he says it, ba'a instead of ba'a, or ba'a instead of ba'a. One is coming, Rachel is coming, imatzon, Rachel ba'a imatzon, or Rachel ba'a imatzon, she came already. So, and you have to repeat, or Balkairi has to repeat it if you got it wrong, because it's two different words, right? Thank you. And now it says, Tzidkatcha kehar tavor. I am sure that most people here have visited the Lower Galil and have seen Har Tavor. What's a characteristic when you're driving on road number 65 in the Afula area and you see to your left Har Tavor? Well, what's characteristic of it? It sticks out like a tall thumb. Like it's a mountain azoi, right? So if you read, let's say in Shoftim Perik Dalet, what? It's round on top, but it also sticks out. You can't miss it.
No, everything is flat.
Everything's flat. And this like just sticks out. It's like an EKG, you know, it just gives a jump and so on. The Har Tavor was the war with the Devorah. in the Shoftim Perek Dalet that she sings about. So tzidkatcha, speaking about God, your greatness is just shoots up. Alei pish'ai avor ta'avor. Avor ta'avor means to do away with, wipe away my sins. Again, another reference to chatotenu yimchol. Pish'ai avor ta'avor, to clean my iniquities, my sins. How fast should you do it? Ki yom etmol ki avor vashmura balayla. This is a takeoff on Tehillim Perek Tzadik, number 6 in the source. Ki elef shanim be'einecha. We say this every Shabbos morning in Sukkot Zimra. Ki elef shanim be'einecha. 1,000 years by you, God, is ki yom etmol, like yesterday, like a day, one day. Ki avor, it just passes, it swipes past. Vashmura balayla, which means just a fraction of the night. The nighttime is divided into 3 equal parts by halacha, and it means you can do this, you can swipe it away. You know why this is a Yom Kippur theme? Because only on Yom Kippur there's a Kadosh Baruch Hu willing to wipe the slate clean totally in one swipe, in one shot. Person does tshuva during the year, okay, so he takes care of one avera, takes care of another avera, and so on. But in Yom Kippur, it's a package deal. Not only l'slicha, limchila, u'lechapara, which are the antidotes for chet, avon, and pesha, as we say, limchilat chet, l'slichat avon, u'lchaparat pasha, right, in Musaf of Rosh Chodesh. So you have the chet, avon, and pesha. So we say after slach lanu, mechal lanu, kaper lanu. There's all 3, because you may have chet, avon, and pesha. So you have to have all 3. You have to have Kadosh Baruch Hu should give slicha, mechila, and kapara. Fine. But we're not through with that. We say, "Vatin lanu Hashem Elokeinu," God gave us Yom Kippurim hazeh l'slicha l'mechila kapara v'limchol bo et kol avonotenu. What's left? If there's going to be slicha, mechila, and kapara, we're done. No. There might be some leftovers. There might be some other things. It's the concept of totality. V'limchol bo. What? Like a mikvah. That's Rabbi Akiva's drasha. That's why Rabbi Akiva said, Mikveh Yisrael Hashem, ma mikveh meteret atmeim, af HaKadosh Baruch Hu meteret Yisrael, that it's the end of Masechet Yoma about Yom Kippur, that he says in mikveh, there's no such thing as coming out of the mikveh 99% tahor. Either you're 100% tamei or you're 100% tahor. Mikveh doesn't do part-time work. It's all or nothing. And that's why Rabbi Akiva says that the kapara of Yom Kippur, how do we end the Masechet that we deal with the laws of Yom Kippur with the concept of mikveh? Ma mikveh metaheret atmeim, just like mikveh purifies the person totally. I remember the Rav read this and he said totally. Af HaKadosh Baruch Hu metaheret Yisrael, totally. And that's the Yom Kippur experience. So that's the idea of ki yom esma, right away, in one shot. It's Matzah Yom Kippur now. Cholfa onat minchati, mi yiten minuchati. The writer is saying, I've passed the time of my mincha. When is the Korban mincha brought in the Beit HaMikdash? Which hours of the day? Plus minus, roughly speaking. When is it not brought? It's not in the morning. It's not brought at night. What's left? The afternoon. The rest of the day. That's smart. The rest of the day. The afternoon. What's called Bein Ha'arbayim. Bein Ha'arbayim. So the Zman of Korban Mincha is anywhere between 12:30 and sundown. 12:30 and sundown. Okay, so that's Mincha. Now, if you just plot that in terms of a person's life, it would mean he's in the second half of his life. More than half of his life has passed. Now, how in the world can a person make that judgment if he doesn't have a clue when is going to be the end of life? It's true. But you play with averages. So if a person is 50 years old, so a person can say, I'm now in the second half of my life.
Going downhill.
If you're in 70 years old, you're most probably more than half past your life. If you're 80, you're in all likelihood more than half of your life, right? But I would say today, if a person is 50, you can most probably say...
Middle-aged.
Middle age, right? Okay, middle age is like the noontime of a person's lifetime. He says, I've passed already, chalfa onat minchati. My mincha time, my lifespan, I'm already in the second half, right? V'mi ten menuchati. I haven't found yet what's going to please you. Why should somebody in Yom Kippur think this? Or what's Yom Kippur? There was a tremendous thought that Rav Kook said, that's found in his Olat Re'iyah, which is his Perush to the Siddur, that I didn't learn this, I saw it later in the Olat Re'iyah. It's the only piece of Torah that I ever heard the Rav quote Rav Kook. He loved this idea. He thought it was so phenomenal. We say at end of every Shmoneh Esrei, Elokai, ad shelo notzarti, eini kedai. V'achshav shenotzarti, ke'ilu lo notzarti. What does that mean? Elokai, God, until I was created, I wasn't worth anything. Now that I was created, it's as if I wasn't created. What are we saying? So Rav Kook said as follows. Elokai, there's a reason that I wasn't born in a different era, in a different generation. Because there was nothing for me to do in another generation. I understand that I was put into this era for a specific purpose. And it wouldn't have worked 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago. Elokai ad shelo notzarti, until I was born, eini kedai. I was worth nothing. I had nothing to do. I had no mission. The trouble is, v'achshav shenotzarti, now that I'm here, ke'ilu lo, I haven't figured it out yet. I haven't figured out, what do you want from me? What exactly do you want from me? I'm trying to do my best, but I can't put my finger on it. I can't put my finger on it. Cholfa onat menuchati, mi ten menuchati. I haven't figured out yet what to offer you, God, as being, that I've done my job. I've done my purpose. Yagati be'anchati asche b'chol laila. This should ring a chord. If you look at source number 7 from Tilim Perek Vav, Yagati be'anchati, I am yawning. I'm tired from my yawning. Asche b'chol laila, I am swimming at night. Mitati b'dimati arsi emse. Eres means a bed, like an infant, a crib. A crib. I am melting. Amse means I'm melting in the tears. I'm drowning in my tears. When do we say this pasuk? Let's see who davens with semi-kavana.
Well, it's in Tachanun.
Well, it's in Tachnun. Yes, it's in Tachnun. Yeah, Buzai. Okay, it's in Tachnun. And now we understand why there's no Tachnun on Shabbos and Yom Tov. The Rambam believes that Tachanun, to say supplication prayer, not just the formal tefillah, Shmoneh Esrei, where you're standing erect, you have an agenda, you're supposed to be dressed properly for Shmoneh Esrei, and you have a formal structure of what you're asking for. That's Shmoneh Esrei. Not good enough. That may not work. At the end of the day, you have a temper tantrum of a baby. A baby at 1 year old, 1.5 year old, doesn't want to move, doesn't want to do, just bangs on the floor and cries. That's what Tachnun was. It was a temper tantrum, not without the word temper, it was a tantrum. It was a baby's tantrum with tremendous amount of tears. Rabbi Shalom, help me. A baby doesn't have to articulate the words, I am hungry, Ima. The mother should get the point, just by the cry. The cry of the baby is enough. And if the Shmoneh Esrei didn't work, maybe the cry of the baby is going to work. Because we're also not just human beings with intelligence, we're also Ba'alei Chayim. We're part of the animal kingdom. And you gotta feed me. You have to give me what I need. And we're gonna cry like a baby who has no capability, no power, totally dependent on the mother, totally dependent here on the Kodesh Baruch Hu. And you know how they used to say Tachnun? They got on the floor, on all four, and banged on the floor, and they cried. So today, that doesn't work. So what we do is we put a hand over the head, and that's called Nefilat Apayim. It's like a little symbolic zecher of what we used to do, and I don't know too many people who are crying during Tachnun. But what happened was, people cried during Tachnun. And this pasuk triggered the tears. it wasn't such a thing you wanted to happen on Shabbos and Yom Tov. So they said, all right, let's just drop it. Drop it for Shabbos and Yom Tov. The Rambam believes there should be Tachnun even on Shabbos and Yom Tov. But then he says, the minhag pashut means widespread custom, not a simple custom. It means widespread custom. Minhag shehit pashet in modern Hebrew. The minhag, the custom that spread was that on Shabbat and Yom Tov and Rosh Chodesh and Chanukah and Purim and even on Erev Shabbat by Mincha and Erev Shabbat on Yom Tov, on Erev Yom Tov, on Mincha of Erev Yom Tov, we don't say, these are the days we don't say Tachnun. Rambam's list is very, very stingy. Because when you get to Shulchan Aruch, you start finding out that it's like in Einstein's law of the expansion of the universe is the law, because it never gets smaller. The list of the days you don't say Tachnun is expansive. So we added already Lag Baimer and Tu B'Shvat and Tu B'Av and the whole Nisan and half of Tishrei, and don't ask. And half the, what?
Singing.
And the Sigit, the day of the Yom Tov of the Ethiopians was thrown in just recently, and a Moil and a Sandik and a Chassan and that, yeah, and a Rebbe's Yortzeit. And I remember seeing in Bar Park in a Stiebel a book. It was a calendar. Every single day of the Hebrew calendar was some Rebbe's Yortzeit. They never said Tachnun, but there was one day in the calendar year that no Rebbe ever died, the 5th of Iyar. So they said Tachnun, because they didn't want anybody to think that they weren't saying Tachnun, God forbid, because of Yom Ha'atzmaut. So once a year they said Tachnun. You imagine? I mean, Tzadikei Olam, Mamish. Yeah. So there was a lot of zilzul, really, a lot of zilzul. The Rambam believes it's an integral part of Shmoneh Esrei. So this pasuk was very, very important. Go back to the poem. Yagati v'anchati asrer b'chol laila. You can see that he's crying. This is Tachnunim. Koli shamata, shama, bal yinutal. For the word natal, notel, means to take away. I'm calling out to you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please don't take it away from me, my power of tefillah. Ptach li shar hamenutal. Again, he's back, where is he? He's in Nila. Ptach li shar. Okay, be'et nilat shar, kifanayom. You can see he's got the machzor opened here. Heyater nora ve'ayom ashavea tena pidyom. Nora ve'ayom. It is this yomim noiroim. Nora ve'ayom. Heyater means prayer. I am davening in this day that is awesome. Nora ve'ayom. Ashavea is also an expression of tefillah. Tena pidyom. Give me redemption. Redeem me. Beneshef be'eref yom bi'ishon laila. I am in the evening. I am in the thick of night. There's one more word. What? Did I skip something? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Koli shima. It's also about tefillah. Right. Sharoshin nimlat al kvutzotav risisei laila, which comes from Shir Hashirim, and there in Shir Hashirim, in source number 8, the meaning Sharoshin nimlat al, my head is the dod banging on the door of the Raya, that the dod is Roshi Nimlatal, is full of dew and overflowing, which means it's like almost a desperation. Here, the Paitan is turning it around on the person, the author himself, the one who's saying it. Roshi Nimlatal Kutzatai B'Silai Kutzatai B'Silai. I am davening. I'm pouring out my head. My everything. My head is packed with tears. Hey, ater noravi ayom ashavea tnapid yom. I'm davening on this day, which is awesome day. Please redeem me. Beneshef be'erev yom bi'ishon laila. So the pasuk in source number 9, Beneshef be'erev yom bi'ishon laila, has one more word, va'afela, which means pitch black, and it's all a reference to galut. And the Paitan just didn't want to say the word va'afela. It was too painful. I mean, it didn't fit into the poem, but fine, that too. Laila. He needed the Laila. But the Afela wasn't interwoven somehow into this. He could have done it. He could have done it, but he didn't. He deleted Afela just to soften the blow a little bit. So you're talking about his personal sins, you're talking about Am Yisrael in Galut, all merged together. Kiraticha ya Hoshieni. This is the song, the Kalbach song that I played before most people came. Kraticha ya Hoshienu, calling out to God. These are all expressions of tefillah. Please help me. Orech Chayim Todieni. Teach me the pathway of life. Midalut tivatzeni. Protect me from poverty, but here it also means from exile. Galut. Dalut, play on galut, dalut, miyom va'ad laila. From day to night, we're in galut. Taher tinuf ma'asei. What's that? Ma'asai. Cleanse. Tinuf means my dirt. Again, it's an expression of a chait, of a sin. Pen yomru machisai. Those who anger me will say, which means the enemy. Ayeh Eloha Osai Noten Zmirot Balayla. This you have in the Chumash already. Lama Yomru Agoyim. What are they going to say? My enemies, they're singing through the night. You've let them sing through the night. Through this galut, you know what he's talking about? He's talking about the church. They're having a ball. They're crowning kings. They're running Europe. They're singing the Zmirot. And they're saying that we, OUisrael, have no more connection to you. You have to cleanse this. Nachnu biyadcha, we are in your hands. Kechomer, do you remember Kechomer biyad yotzer that we say on the night of Yom Kippur? It's a pasuk in Yirmiyahu. Slach la al kal v'chomer. So we know what a kal v'chomer means, but here it means on the mitzvot kalot and the mitzvot chamurot. Torah is divided into two types of the more serious, and let's just say that everything's important, but nothing is not important, but yet only on certain averot is it said that there's capital punishment or there's karet and so on. And you ever notice that those that the Torah gives karet, even Jews here in Israel who may not be particularly religious are careful about. Brit Milah, there's karet. Fasting in Yom Kippur, there's karet. Not eating chametz on Pesach, there's karet. A lot of Jews. You have 20% of Jews in Israel who define themselves as religious, Shomrei Torah mitzvot. A lot more than 20% fast on Yom Kippur. We know that. A lot more. And the others. Somehow, if there was an avon karet, everybody takes it more seriously. So the Torah can be divided between the kalot and chamurot. Do you remember Pirkei Avot? Hevei zahir b'mitzvah kala kevachamura. Be careful about the soft-going mitzvot or the lenient mitzvot also, because you don't really know how a Kadosh Baruch Hu schedules the afterworld record. You don't know how that goes, and don't make a division between. Although the halacha makes such a division between kalot and chamurot. So this is the kal v'chomer. Yom liyom yabia omer v'layla layla yechaveh da'at is the pasuk in Tehillim. Yom liyom, day and day, and night and night. Of course, this became a name of a book of Rav Avad Yosef. Yabia omer, based on Yud Bet Yud Ayin. Read it backwards. Ayin Yud Bet Yud. Ovadia Yosef ben Yaakov. So that he got his name there. And the newspaper became, right, Yom Liyom V'Layla Yechaveh Dat. No, I'm sorry, right. And then Yechaveh Dat is the second version of his Svarim. It's called Yechaveh Dat. I think there's also a gematria of his name, Avadia, on that. So two of his sets of the Shilot Teshuvot come from this pasuk, Yom V'Yom and Layla. And the newspaper became something Yom, what do they call it? There's something Yom V'Yom. But Beseda. So the idea is that this pasuk is related to Torah, that we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we should be involved in Limut Torah, Yom V'Layla, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we should understand the Kalot and the Chamorot, and if we erred in anything, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should forgive us. Kel Podeh Mikol Tsar, Krinaucha Min HaMeitzar, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should redeem us from all difficulties. Krinaucha Min HaMeitzar comes straight out of Hallel, Tilim, Kuf Yudchet, Min HaMeitzar Karati, right? Yadcha lo tiktzar. Yadcha lo tiktzar was said about Moshe Rabbeinu when he's asking for the slav. And he says, you're Kadosh Baruch Hu. You can do anything. And the phrase that Moshe Rabbeinu uses is Yadcha lo tiktzar. And here, the Paitan is saying, you can bail us out. You don't have a shorthand. You have a Zroa Netuyah, remember? You can do it all. Lo yom v'lo laila. Makes no difference, day or night. You can do it. And then he gets into Michael Sar Yisrael. Before we get to that, just take a look. Where does the Yitzchak HaKatan come to an end? Which stanza? It comes to an end with the Nachnu Biyadcha. Kel Podeh Mikol Tsar, in many Sidurim, does not appear. The rest of the poem does not appear in many of the Sidurim and the Zmirot of Motzei Shabbat. And some say it's already a different author. So there's already a question if this is part of the original Hamavdil. Well, we'll continue just for a moment. We're looking at the Malachim that somehow are going to be involved in the process of Geula. So, do you remember what said in the paragraph that said in Kriyat Shema Shalayla, B'Shem Hashem, B'Shem Hashem, Kalvach Negen, right? Michael Mimin Michael, Mismol Gabriel, Ve'ushchinat El is Me'al, is on top. That idea is interwoven right here. Michael Sar Yisrael, Eliyahu, he's part of the process. Gabriel, Bo na im hagoel. The Goel is a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Come now, join. Kumu b'chatzi halayla. This is a play on Vayhi b'chatzi halayla, where Kadosh Baruch Hu intervenes at that moment of the smack in the middle of the night. And the Paitan, the author says, we're in the middle of the night. It is desperate. And let's bring out all the forces. And he says, Miminoimenu Michael, from the right, Michael, Solenu Gabriel, Val Rashenu, and on our head, Shchinat El, B'chol Yom, B'chol Laila. I have no doubts that he's got that little part of Kriyat Shema Shalayla right there as he writes this particular line. And now he says something about, which suggests this is a real Motzei Shabbos thing, not just Yom Kippur. Tana lanu Shavua Tov. Shavua Tov. Okay, so you can see he wasn't from Europe because he would have said Gut Vach. But he was Israeli, he said Shavua Tov. Tuna lanu Shavua Tov ra'anan kigan ratuv, like a rejuvenated week. Ume Hashem yavo hatov kol hayom v'chol halayla. Yivorach habayit hazeh, my house should be blessed. Mipi navi v'gam chozeh. So chozeh is a navi. So who's the navi and gam chozeh? It's Eliyahu Navi. It's Eliyahu Navi who plays two different roles. There's Eliyahu Navi in Tanakh, and there's Eliyahu Navi of Hinei Enochi Sholech Lechem et Eliyahu Navi Lifnei Bo Yom Hashem Hagadol V'Norah. And you can talk about the differences between Eliyahu Navi, who might be an incarnation of Pinchas, of Kanaut, and you see that in the stories of Eliyahu Navi. And you don't get the impression when you're studying Sefer Malachim, Aleph, that this is the Eliyahu who we're talking about, we sing about Motzei Shabbos. Yet, he was the Navi, that's his place in Sefer Malachim Aleph, but he's the Chozeh, he's the seer in the future, because Hinei Enochi Sholech Lachem et Eliyahu Navi Lifnei Bo Yom Hashem Hagadol V'Hanorah. And you know, we sing Eliyahu Navi songs, and one of the reasons is, if you look at the page, at the source number 19, from the Gemara Masechet Eruvin, Kvar muftach lahen liYisrael she'ein Eliyahu ba lo ba'arvei Shabbatot v'lo ba'arvei Yamim Tovim mibnei TORAH. Kodesh Baruch Hu assured us Eliyahu is not going to show up on an Erev Shabbos or Erev Yom Tov. You know why? Because if he's coming a day before Mashiach, and you want Mashiach to come Shabbos, what's going to be with my kugel? What's going to be with my chulent? It's going to be a big balagan. That's called Mibnei HaTorah. It's a big balagan. And the Kodesh Baruch Hu said, don't worry, he won't come on Friday or on Erev Yom Tov. So when is the first opportunity? Motzei Shabbat. That's why we sing the Eliyahu Navi songs on Motzei Shabbat. It says, Yavo Yevorach habayit hazeh mipi navi v'gam chozeh, ki chen yitzaveh Elokeinu zeh l'shamro yomam v'layla. Kodesh Baruch Hu will watch our house day and night. Hamavdil Bein mayim limayim. When was that said? On the second day of creation. Now, one say that's very strange. The mavdil bein mayim limayim is the one thing in the creation that does not receive a kitov. The kitov is completed on Yom Shlishi. But bein mayim limayim, mayim elyonim and mayim tachtonim, as Chazal teach us, was a Monday thing. What does that mean? It means that Kadosh Baruch Hu has made divisions. And the divisions are not just between Shabbat and the weekday. It's Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'chol, ben or l'choshech, between the world of good and the world of bad, ben Yisrael la'amim, ben Yom HaShvi'i l'sheshet yemei hamasa. All of these go together. And as Rav Kook pointed out once, this I didn't hear from the Rav, this is independent learning. Rav Kook pointed out once, without Chol, there's no Kedusha. Without 6 days of weekday, there's no Shabbat. Without Goyim, there's no Am Yisrael. Without the world, there's no Eretz Yisrael. Because Kedusha is dependent on Havdalah, a division. Mavdil ben Kodesh l'chol. You must necessarily have something that remains outside the realm of Kedusha in order to have Kedusha. So he begins with the day of the Lotov. The Lotov. And that's the Mavdil ben Mayim l'Mayim. Lemayim yichayenu is a pasuk in Mishlei which refers to Tchiyat HaMetim. God should rejuvenate us. Yar'enu betuv Yerushalayim. We should be able to see the greatness, the best of Yerushalayim. And now he gets to Bereshis again, where the sun and the moon are both going to be me'orot hagdeolim v'limshol bayom u'balayla. In Kiddush Levana, we say Yiratzon she'Kadosh Baruch Hu yimalei et pikimat haLevana. That which was taken away from the moon should be restored. I have another minute. I opened up the Machzor, Yom Kippur Machzor, that I received as a gift from a wonderful family in Katamon, the Jesselsons. Machzor Yom Kippur. What's so special about Machzor Yom Kippur? It's the Machzor with the commentary of Rav Dr. Yosef Breuer. Rav Breuer, grandson of Shamshon Fal Hirsch, and the Breuer's community, the shul in Washington Heights. And here in Nila, it says, Ki ine kachomer biyada yotzer. This is not in our standard Ashkenaz. They did it differently in Frankfurt. They didn't say this. We say this on the night of Kol Nidre, but they have it by Nila. Ki ine kachomer biyada yotzer, bitzoto marchib, bitzoto mikatzer, kein anachnu biyadcha, chesed notzer, labrit habeit, ve'al tefen layetzer. In parenthesis, lemotzei Shabbat. Only on Motzei Yom Kippur of Shabbos. Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'chol, chatatenu yimchol, kaspenu v'zar'enu, yarbe kachol, bekachochavim balayla, says Harav Breuer. This Pizmon reflects the double message when Shabbat and, he says Shabbos, and Yom Kippur happen to fall on the same day, admonishing us the gravity which Shabbat and Yom Kippur send us forth into the working week. One of the main reasons for our mistaken ways for the past was that we failed to properly comprehend the separate concepts of Kodesh and Chol. The meaning of these concepts is not that only on Shabbat the day remains holy to God, while the working week may be conducted in an unholy manner. Rather, separate place that the Shabbat takes in our calendar so that the spirit of the sanctity of every Shabbat should extend throughout the entire working week. Having spent all of Shabbat and Yom Kippur in true devotion to God, we have renounced forever our mistaken ways, and we are ready to elevate even the profane to God. And we do not shy away from asking God to increase our wealth and our children. Every child we receive from His hand is a sacred trust, and every bit of our resources acquired properly in the eyes of God is used to serve Him as a sacred possession dedicated to Him. Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'chol.